MagicCon Chicago was a little over a week ago as I record. It was my first MagicCon and the biggest organized event that I'd been to in a long time. But how was it? Well, I'm here to talk about what happens when the kitchen table meets everything and the kitchen sink. I had a great time. I got to play some games, I saw a lot of famous people, and I ogled the many, many singles that I would never, ever consider buying. I only got to really go down for Friday and maximize on Friday, and then I got to go down on Saturday night, running down after rehearsal for a play event, and that was just about it. So, let's break it down, shall we? I've been to C2E2 in early 2020, I think in the same convention center. This was not nearly as crazy as that. Hopefully we learned something in the meantime about crowding. I did see 80% fewer baby strollers, which was a remarkable feat of sense and social decency. Of course, any con is mostly people selling things, and because I'm a non-singles buyer, 75% of that stuff was completely irrelevant eye candy. Although I did find myself in the presence of honest-to-God Power Nines for the first time in my life. But I do have a wife, and she loves true crime podcasts, and would definitely know how to murder me and get away with it if I dropped 5 figures on a Black Lotus. Real quick, though, if it were me, and I did have 15 grand to blow on a Lotus, I would never buy one that isn't graded. Even if it's graded, this is real hurt, bro. At least the seller cares, and at the very least, someone has put their eyes on that card and said, yes, this isn't fake. And while we're on the topic of lotuses, we need to get on naming the extant lotuses in the world, like Stradivarius violins, right? I want to know the story behind the Boise lotus after it made its way out of Idaho, or I want to hear how the Merlot lotus narrowly escaped a spilled drink in 1996. Build your story, guys. Aside from dice, there wasn't much in the way of bespoke Magic the Gathering merchandise, aside from there was one booth that had extremely high-end counters, like +1/+1 counters and flying counters and things like that, like really like solid metal, very expensive, way out of my price range. But that's okay, it'll save me some money. Although most artists had a huge slew of custom tokens that were really neat, I did pick up a few of those. Otherwise, my only indulgences were, I grabbed one of those black metal Aragorns because, hell yeah, and I picked up a Sacred Foundry, but only to meet a charge minimum, I swear. Official merch was BANANAS bananas. I think we went full into PINEAPPLES, pineapples territory at that point. Did you know that they grew on the ground and one at a time? Pineapples, so neat. The queue went on and on and on, just all day and all night. Anytime I looked over there to see how is it going now, it was like, nope. And I looked back, nope. I'm not going to carve out a huge amount of time for that. I mean, I really wanted that Magic is for Everyone Pride shirt, but okay. All right. Was not happening. I was not about to spend that chunk of time waiting in that line for that. Especially because this guy who loves pins would have been very tempted to get that, $120 Guild Signet pin set? It's probably a good thing that I didn't. I was more than happy to support the artists, though. Drop some money to support them. This was hot and cold. The hot. I got some. That Winter Orb means a lot to me. My old friends in Florida will remember my Winter Orb Static Orb Stacks deck with fondness or with post-traumatic stress flashbacks. Also, pretty much every artist that I saw offered a wide variety of like drop shadow and rainbow style signatures, which is really cool. The cold, on the other hand, at least 2 artists were missing in action. Both coincidentally ones that had drawn Joyra cards that I would have been so jazzed to get signed. I mean, she's immortal, but I'm not. I don't know how many more chances I'm going to have. And the information booth seemed to have no idea what was going on there. They were completely clueless as to the non-presence of their own panelists, which was a little weird. Also, signature whales. Say, did you wait in line for hours to get your card signed? Chances are there was some psychopath at the front of the line with dozens of cards to sign all in one go. I mean, come on, friends. Moderate yourselves, okay? If not for the artists, but for the people behind you in line. Come on now. Be kind. With those custom tokens, I did grab a bunch from Arcade Post because they had a lot of cool pop culture references in the tokens. But I do have one little issue, Mr. Post. Sir, you have 2 Nightmare Before Christmas tokens, which is wonderful. I love it. Just a couple of things. You have a Sally one, and she is listed as a zombie. Sally is a golem, a construct, maybe. Is not a zombie. But, sir, you have a Jack Skellington one, and he is also a zombie. He's a skeleton. Skeleton. It's in his name. Skeleton. Love you, though. It's a skeleton. You see it? Do you see it? I see it. I got to play 5 games. 2 random Commander games that I just jumped into in the command zone, and then the 3 games that were part of Gavin Verhey's unknown event on Saturday night. I won 3 of the 5. I felt pretty good about that. First Commander game, I was using Optimus Prime again, and I managed to lay low while the 2 stronger opponents kind of whittled each other down. It was just me and the final guy at that point, which was kind of a nail-biter because he wasn't a pushover. But I did manage to drop Azorius Guild Mage, and then I kind of like baited out an attack from him, and I like tapped one of his attackers down before at the beginning with the combat step. And then on the next turn, I had 9 mana so that I could tap down the 3 remaining blockers that he had, and then just stampede on in. So I pulled that one out. Otherwise, I don't really remember what happened in the game, and I'll tell you why. The con made a distinction between competitive, challenging, and social commander tables. But, as any attendee will tell you, there weren't that many tables to go around, and so I'm sure that scarcity of tables means that some people called their decks social, and they were not social. Case in point, our archenemy in this game. He was running Helena and Elena, which one of the opponents noted that he had been rolled by before. And on top of that, he had some green beater or other that got to move the +1/+1 counters they had back over to Helena and Elena, rinse and repeat. Oh, and he also played Hardened Scales. And then he played the Ozolith. And it was about that time that it became clear that the challenging tables were full, so he came over to us. The second game I played, I was using a very lightly upgraded 10th Doctor pre-constructed from Doctor Who. I hadn't ever had a chance to try it out yet, and I figured a social table was a great place to just give it a go and see what happens. They're right. Everything they say about it being a complicated deck is true, with the managing counters, then going up and down. It's a lot to take in. I got off to a bit of a slow start. I probably should have shuffled more at home after messing with the deck, and I felt pressure to finish shuffling and get to the game because everybody else was ready to go. It was hard to get that first time counter on the War Doctor and Rose Tyler to get things moving, to get that first one on them, and then they could start snowballing, but it was very hard to do that where I was at in the game. Guy to my left had played a spell that made tokens based on his life total, which, of course, in Commander, automatic goose to spells like that with no effort. You had the guy on diagonal, he was playing that Shieldred Saga flip card, so he had some heat coming off of him. So I had my work cut out for me here. I had 2 strokes of luck, however. I drew Gallifrey Falls, which was the board wipe that everyone was hoping that I would draw. And I was able to take out all, 30 of those tokens that that guy had just made, plus a few other things. Eventually, Token Guy and the Merfolk player, they got eliminated, so it was just me and Shieldred Man. And he had stolen a bunch of my creatures from the last chapter on the saga. My other stroke of luck was that I was able to play the Girl in the Fireplace, and the first chapter in that saga gave me a pretty good chump blocker, which saved me for a few turns. So I was able to hold out with that. Because he had stolen those things and he had Shieldred and he had dragons, there was no salvaging that game. But I did hold out a respectable amount of time. Never got to play the 10th Doctor, never got to cast him, and Rose Tyler never got moving, unfortunately. So just too much of a slow start on that one, but I could see where the deck was going with the time shenanigans, and I was able to keep that token with Vanishing in play several turns more than it should have been there by manipulating time travel. So that was fun. So yeah, not a lot of clarity on what social meant, or people just ignored it to get games in, which on the one hand, can't blame you. On the other hand, come on, guys, come on. What I was most looking forward to was Gavin Verhey's Unknown event on Saturday night. I learned about these things on his Good Morning Magic YouTube channel a while back, and I just had to get in on it. Had to. There were some ups and downs here, too. First of all, and everyone around me and the judges knew it, nobody could hear a word Gavin was saying. When he was explaining the event, he was on mic with, 2 amps up at the desk in an open convention hall, and I was 75 feet away from him with 400 people in between me and him absorbing sound. We couldn't hear a word he was saying. Right? Eventually the judges got wise and they started to relay the information to us way back where we were, piecemeal, whatever they could gather. But for a minute there, we all just stopped listening because we couldn't understand a word. As you may have heard, it was sealed one-on-one commander, which is something I'd never tried before. In this matchup, 2 monocolored commanders could be treated like they had partner, so you could do it like that. And commanders started face down, so they were secret until you cast them. Otherwise, it was relatively straightforward, aside from the goofy playtest cards that they handed out. Now, this, of course, creates an issue, because if you end up ruling out some of the legends that you pulled to be your commander, you're also ruling out their color identity, too, and any cool cards in those colors that you might have wanted to play. I ended up with really 3 choices: Lazav, Descana, or Kellen. Lazav was kind of narrow and shallow. It was really just a way to recurse creatures from the graveyard, so that really wasn't going to help out. Descana, morph creatures are only 2/2 temporarily, and I didn't have that many of them, and not that many other 2/2 creatures, so it was not enough to build into that. So, that left Kellen. Kellen had some versatility with the adventure side. Flying seemed like a good fit, so that means I was blue-green. What that also means, and many other people around me were realizing this because we were building 60-card decks, that means you couldn't really cut much from your deck. Once I put all of my green and blue in, I really only had 4 or 5 cards I could take out, and then everything else really kind of had to go in. So I was really at the mercy of my card pool. So game 1, I was up against some sort of fish commander who had some merfolk tribal things going. It was going okay, but that guy got some tempo going. I kind of fell behind a little bit. Kellen was doing their thing, but fell behind, so lost that one. Game 2, I was up against Judith, Carnage Connoisseur. I managed to get an advantage early because he was having trouble with his mana base. Once he got the 5th one out, he was able to cast Judith, and things started to go better for him, and he started to pop me for 2 here and there, using some instants and sorceries to pop me a little bit too, kind of hold me at bay. Kellen was flying over a lot, though, and so this was kind of a real back and forth until we got towards the end. Kellen's ability also, I was able to take care of some of his toys that he had put down, and he didn't realize that was going to happen initially. And also Kellen's ability means that any clues that I have, I can crack those clues basically for free, so that was nice. Yeah, it was kind of close to the wire at that point, but Kellen was able to fly enough to I was able to pull that one out. It was also in that game where I realized that I was kind of at the gravitational center of the universe at the table that we found to play at, because lots of Magic celebrities started to congregate around us. Jimmy Wong was behind me at one point. Olivia from Commander at Home was doing the puzzle from the playtest cards. Somebody spotted Graham from Loading Ready Run. Mr. Verhey came by very briefly, so it was really fun to feel like, wow, I'm at the center of Magic here. Game 3 was against Niv Mizzet. This one was a lot of fun. She didn't get off to a very fast start, but she pulled out Ghostly Prison on turn 2. Held me back really hard and forced me to really, really work on resource management. Then she also got something out like Orm's Prayer also, which was incrementally healing her as I was attacking her. She eventually played Niv Mizzet and I was able to eliminate it at one point. And then I baited her into casting it again and I counterspelled it, so now Niv Mizzet had so much commander text that he was not attractive to cast anymore, so that was not a problem. But I was still having a hard time getting in with the attacks on attacking. And at one point I had this Brushwag playtest card that I wanted to play. But then I read it again. And I realized, I said to myself, wait, can he attack me? We called the judge over to just double check and does he attack me? And yes, this is indeed the case. Because I don't control him, he just goes wherever the attack goes. In addition, because he doesn't come into play under my control, Evolve doesn't trigger off of him. So I'm looking at him like, no, I'm not going to cast this card. And for many turns, he was in my hand, just staring at me, being terrible, and just regretting not cutting him from my deck. Eventually, I decided to go full chaos, and I played him anyway, just to see what happens. And shout out to that judge who came over and double-taked looking at this card to try and figure out what the heck it did. He was glad to have a break from the normal rules questions that he was taking care of, generally speaking, and he hung out for a minute. He signed some cards. He's great. Of course, at that point of the game, it was getting late. And we both asked ourselves, hold on one second, commander damage is a thing, isn't it? Which we hadn't been thinking about at all. And even though she wasn't quite dead because she'd been gaining life off of attacks, I was mostly flying in with Kellen again, hey flying. So we figured to ourselves, like, wait, if you're not dead by commander damage now, this next attack definitely will put you over the edge, and so we called the game at that point. She was probably dead long before that on commander damage, but again, just not thinking about that at all. And that was my half a weekend. It had some high highs and some low lows. It was really just nice to be around the community. I was there by myself, but, that was fine. The little murder mystery thing they had set up was kind of fun. It was fun to wander around and see a bunch of cards, again, that I was unfamiliar with, and all the shinies and things. I would have liked to have played a little more, wouldn't we all? That's the refrain that we're hearing in the blogosphere after the fact. Hopefully Wizards will learn about that when they come back around, because I will absolutely go next year if they're here. Maybe spring for that Black Lotus VIP experience. But I'm looking forward to it in any event. So, until next time, friends, don't worry about winning so much. Enjoy the game, and I'll see you next time.